You gotta be tough out here in the Middle East.
You deny the whole reality, the whole fact, the whole situation, and you normalize the relationship.
Stop using and misusing religion as an excuse.
We're gonna continue to be here. That's just the way it is.
We're Oskar and Dan, two boys from Sweden trying to see as much of the world as possible. Right now we're on our way to visit 100 countries before the end of 2022, and we recently visited countries 86 and 87 of Israel and Palestine.
To clarify, when counting countries, we go off the commonly accepted list of 197 sovereign states, which includes the 193 UN member nations, the 2 observer states of Vatican City and Palestine, as well as the disputed countries of Kosovo and Taiwan.
We wanted to make the most of our visit and learn more about one of the world's most complex and well-known conflicts. So we went to Jerusalem and headed to the West Bank to try to understand this region a little bit better.
So, since this is the internet and people tend to take things at face value, I just want to make 2 clarifications. Obviously, first of all, there's no way that this video or any video on YouTube is going to be able to do this conflict justice. Even with all the footage that we take today, we're not going to be able to include nearly all of it, because that would turn into a several hour-long video. And then secondly, I also want to say that obviously we are not here to try to be some sort of peacemakers or whatever. We're just here to learn as much as possible, try to be more well-informed, see both sides. That is literally it. Any hateful comments on this video will be taken down. Let's get into the video.
Hello from our 85th country of Malta, where we are about to fly to our 86th and 87th in this video countries.
We're landing in Tel Aviv late tonight, and then tomorrow morning, super early, we're getting up to do a dual tour of both Israel and Palestine. Time to go to country 86 and 87. Made it through immigration, got our bags. Questioning was more intense than in other places, but not really bad for us anyway.
This was so much quicker than I could have ever expected. We landed 25 minutes ago. We're already done with our tests. We have our bags, we did immigration. So now let's get a taxi to Jerusalem.
And we have about a 50-minute drive now.
5-0.
5-0. One of the really geeky and nerdy things I love as a language enthusiast is when we travel to see a new language on signs. So we're very used to seeing the Arabic kharush, which means exit, but obviously we haven't seen Hebrew signs in a lot of places. And now Dan realized he already lost his immigration slip. So he's running back to see if he can get it.
I feel so stupid.
Did you find it?
No, but the fact that I was like, Oskar, don't lose your blue slip now. It's very important. And then I'm like, just gonna check my...
No, that did
I'm
not
done.
just happen.
Well, it was only 15 minutes we wasted. Let's go.
Finally found a shuttle which apparently goes to different hotels around Jerusalem. Good. So we can go straight to the hotel without having to connect in the city.
We just made it to the best named hotel chain in the world. This is the Dan Hotel. And everything is Dan branded. The pen, the paper, there's Dan soap, Dan shampoo. We love it. All accommodation, all hotels, all Airbnbs in Israel are very expensive.
Damn, Dan, you should really sue them for this.
Can I say I'm generous?
Funnily enough, we met 2 Moroccan women downstairs. They were here on this Moroccan youth leader delegation to strengthen ties between Morocco and Israel.
They were so cool. I wish we could have spoken to them more. They struck up a conversation. We spoke about Morocco since we were just there last week. Not only that, but our tour guide in Morocco had a PhD in Jewish Moroccan history. And tomorrow we are heading to the Palestinian territories. That's what we're really in Jerusalem for, to learn as much as we can.
So on that note, see you in the morning.
Good morning from Jerusalem. We're about to catch a taxi to go meet our group because we are doing a day tour. So it's just very hectic since getting in late last night, and we're trying to find our Israeli Uber.
So, like we said yesterday, today we're doing a dual perspective tour, which means that we're gonna have two different tour guides. One is Israeli Jewish and one is Palestinian Muslim. And we're gonna be touring around the ancient city of Hebron, which is very, very important to both religions. And we're gonna hear both perspectives and try to learn as much as possible while we're here and just try to be as informed world citizens as we can. So I was just checking the navigation to get to Hebron from Jerusalem because I was curious to see how long it was gonna be. It's pretty close, it's only 30 kilometers away, but it just says can't find a way there. So there's no way to navigate on Google Maps to get to Hebron. We met up with our Israeli guide who would take us down to the city of Hebron.
The word Hebron in Hebrew, Hebron, is Hebron, one of the 4 holy cities in Judaism. Our first holiest city is Jerusalem. Our other 2 holy cities, Tiberias and Sfat, or Safed. Bulletproof glass. You notice it probably a huge rock hit this, it didn't break. It looked shattered, but still, knock on it. Yeah. Still strong.
On the tour, we got to listen to a lot of people on both sides. We've included small pieces of what they said in the main part of the vlog and have placed extended versions at the end if you're interested. What we got to hear was so interesting, so we definitely recommend you listen to all of it.
However, it's important to clarify that the views expressed in the video don't necessarily represent the views of all Israelis or Palestinians. Neither can we guarantee the factual basis of any claims. With that said, let's get on with the tour.
So we made it to the Israeli side of Hebron. We're about to meet up with our guide, Mohammed. Just had the most amazing guide ever named Mohammed in Morocco. Now we have a guide named Mohammed here is gonna take us to the Palestinian side of the city. And we're gonna have lunch with his family. So it's gonna be super interesting to see these two perspectives today. Hi, nice to meet you.
Our first stop was the Ibrahimi Mosque, standing on the Cave of the Patriarchs, which is where Jews, Muslims, and Christians believe that the biblical forefathers, including Abraham, are buried. Okay, so we're off to the first stop on the tour. This is really cool. This is a building that is part a synagogue. On the one side it's a synagogue, on the other side it's a mosque. And the border between them is right where the border in Hebron lies.
Anybody, if you have anything sharp on, such like a knife or a pocket knife or scissors or anything.
Inside this mosque, there was an attack in 1994. We'll let our guides explain more about that later.
The Palestinians refused.
And why is that?
Because we're Palestinians. We have our own residence. We don't want to be, another nation in a different country, just like that.
Our next stop was the Palestinian Chamber of Commerce. It smells like Arabic coffee, which would be very exciting.
Of Hebron Chamber of Commerce and Industry. So Hebron as an ancient city goes back to 6,000 years and one of the oldest inhabited cities in the world. We represent 45% of GDP of Palestine. In 1995 we had what is called Paris Protocol, and Paris Protocol is already putting Palestine and Israel both in the same economic envelope. But I try to compare. The minimum annual wage of an Israeli who's working in Israel is around 38,000 euros, while the minimum wage in Palestine is 3,800 euros. So try to imagine how could I be in the same economic envelope with another country where I have this huge difference. I have to tell you 100% that our conflict between Palestine and Israel is never a religious conflict. If you look to the Palestinian diversity, we have already Palestinian Muslims, we have inter-Christians, we have Catholic, Protestant, and we have Palestinian Jewish currently in Naples, the Samaritans who are already still living in Naples. So I look forward for the Holy Land, not only Palestine, the whole Holy Land, to live without conflict. I don't want also my children, I don't want the Israeli children to live in the future the life that I live.
So we just went into this glass factory which is selling some beautiful, beautiful stuff, but it feels like walking into almost some sort of weird alternate reality because everything is blue and beautiful, and then there's this man sitting there just in this old-fashioned glass oven. It's fascinating. walking through the souk here in Hebron, and it's just fun to see a different type of souk, but a lot of things are closed, seemingly due to the economic situation here. So above that market over there, when you saw the sort of fence, that separated an Israeli settlement above the market and the Palestinians living below.
So the house used to be owned by the Palestinians at that time, and of course, when the family have lived in the house and the sole settlers lived in the container, the Israeli military decided to take the rooftop and convert it into a military base.
Shukran. Can try an olive from this nice man. Very good. Brings me back to last week.
Right here on the other side of the wall starts the Israeli part of Hebron. So yeah, a very, very divided city.
So we've clearly found the clothing souk, and this is a very active market compared to the other parts.
Mountains of shoes.
And loads of military merchandise. Wow, now we're in a lively part of Hebron. It's really bustling, actually.
Even though that this is a Palestinian-controlled Hebron, if you look around you, high buildings or high floors of the buildings are not used, and that's an Israeli order to not allow Palestinians to use buildings. We have this building, that one over there, and that's an Israeli military order. Again, back when they apply military orders on Palestinians, it's always security reasons. They never justify, they never clarify the reasons or the excuses behind. Our next station will be lunch.
Obviously, coming from Europe and the EU, the concept of borders is usually a pretty abstract concept. Like, you don't really think about it because the borders aren't necessarily physical. Very different reality here, with borders being incredibly present all the time. You can't really miss them. Time for lunch at Mohammed's home.
During the meal, we asked Mohammed if he felt support from the rest of the Arabic world.
Recently, you see some Arabic countries even normalizing the relationship. What is the word normalizing? Normalizing is to normalize something abnormal. What is the abnormal between the Arabic world and Israel is the Palestinian case, and the Palestinian case is not solved. So how come you normalize something, you deny the whole reality, the whole fact, the whole situation, and you normalize the relationships? I'm happy that the world woke up on what Russia is doing to Ukraine within 24 hours, but it's already taking them 70 years to still discuss what Israel is doing against the international law or not.
Completely honestly, what do you think would be the best solution, just personally?
On a fact, I deeply believe in the two-state solution. Okay, but I know that Israel is killing every hope of it by building up settlements every morning. What really matters to me is that to end up the occupation, at least to stop them from building up a new settlement. When somebody is having a cancer in the body, and then the cancer is growing, and you ask, what do you want to be in the future? He wants to finish his big problem first. And after he reached that level, he would definitely think about his future. So I don't mind any kind of a solution if it gives me my full rights. I cannot lose my identity and the other side win it. We either win it or we either lose it. And they should thank their God that we're ready to discuss on our own country.
Hey,
We're
checkpoint.
exiting, going through a checkpoint. Anyway.
So we're now at the gate. There's a passport control on the other side. So people have to wait until the passport control clears and maybe pass through into Israel.
After the Palestinian part of the tour, it was time to move on to the Israeli side.
Now we're heading back into the mosque we were in earlier, but now we're heading to the synagogue side.
first, we got to hear the Israeli perspective on the 1994 attack inside the Ibrahimi Mosque.
There was a Jewish doctor, probably about 50 to 70 of his close friends were murdered and died in his own arms. My understanding, he snapped. It's Purim, 1994. Now here on the radio, after the Jewish holiday of Purim is over, that Baruch Goldstein had gone into the mosque when the Muslims were praying there, killing 29 Muslims. Now, I asked some of my friends of Hebron today, Jewish friends, what is the rationale? Some of them will say, we think he's a hero. Why? Because they were screaming on the loudspeaker that the Muslims were about to perpetrate a horrific massacre against the Jews. And by him going in, he prevented a massacre that was about to happen. Now, I myself then said this point, and I say it till now. I don't think it's justified to go into a mosque. First of all, you have a lot of hotheads. Just go to Al-Aqsa any Friday, grabbing microphones and screaming horrific things into the loudspeaker. Let the Israeli army and police do their job. Don't be a vigilante. This is the tomb of Abraham. This, by the way, from here is the only point you can see from the Jewish to the Muslim side, looking through the bulletproof glass. You can actually talk to each other. It's a bulletproof glass, but words are not bullets.
This is the second holiest place in all of Judaism, not only the city of Hebron, but also specifically this wall right behind us, which is now the synagogue / mosque. So in his point of view, it's always been a place of multiple different faiths, and it's just kind of crossed over between different faiths throughout history. And then for 700 years, it was a mosque only, and Jews weren't allowed inside. They were only allowed to be outside by the wall. Yeah, it's very interesting with this dual perspective tour, because you hear one thing and you're like, oh, okay, this is reality. And then you hear a completely different or opposing view now in the afternoon. And honestly, I feel like I'm just left even more confused with more questions.
Our guide spoke to us regarding the guards and checkpoints.
These Jewish soldiers, often their commanders in Hebron, they speak Arabic, are Druze. So it's not about Arab and Jewish racism. It is a policy of security or excessive measures that are unjust from the Palestinian point of view. I wouldn't say that's apartheid. I would say that's a national struggle. In this area of the old city, it is ugly. The Jews don't like it either. We're about to go into the Jewish neighborhood. A father is pushing his baby in a baby carriage. His baby's name is Shelhevet, which means shimmering flame. A Palestinian sniper on the now destroyed building at the top of the hill. It's still there. The father is injured. The 1-year-old baby in the baby carriage dies. Of course, if I'm Palestinian, I can point to Gaza operations and children killed. Anytime there's a child killed in a conflict, it's tragic. Or like the other day, a father axed alive in front of his own children while mothers with babies were running away. This was 3 days ago. I didn't say there aren't also Palestinian victims, children killed in conflict, but I do point out that every society, of course, we're going to look at our wounded and killed. Go into a synagogue, I'll tell you the story, and I'm going to try to hopefully get us a meeting with Ishai Fleischer, the official spokesman in English. Are Jews indigenous to South Africa, to Sweden, to Brooklyn, New York, to Antwerp, even to Morocco? No. We're indigenous to Hebron. But if I'm a journalist, the first thing is I'm going to hear someone like my friend Tariq explain in depth the checkpoints and the roadblocks and the curfews. So certainly from the outside, if you don't see the inside of the Jewish communal life, the Jews who have returned here, guess what? I would actually agree the appearance of how we are here to have to be protected by barbed wires, the security measures only because of terrorist attacks taken from the outside is easily to say are foreign colonial settler occupiers, like an outpost landing on Muhammad and any Palestinian's head after the 67 war, with no context whatsoever, nothing connecting to what used to be here. The point, the Jews see themselves as indigenous. Like, I'm not saying the Muslims aren't also indigenous. We're the children of Abraham. According to our holy books, we're both indigenous. We're both brothers.
Next entered the spokesman for the Jewish community of Hebron.
2,900 years ago, already we have archaeological evidence of the Jewish presence in this land. We already have Hebrew script. Roman rule destroys Jewish sovereignty here 2,000 years ago. You know, the Colosseum and the Arch of Titus, it's all written. This was, built from the destruction of the Jewish presence in Judea. That was 2,000 years ago. However, Jews continue to remain and live here in Hebron because of their connection to the tomb of the forefathers and mothers. So Jews are here through the Byzantine period, where the Byzantines come and build a church on top of that building. Then the Arab conquest comes in 637. Then Christians come back under the Crusades and actually scare off the Jews for about 50 years, and yet Jews come back. After that comes the Mamluk period, 1267. Jews are still living here, but they kick them out of the building. We were not allowed to pray inside the building, and that edict lasted 700 years, from 1267 to 1967. Yet Jews remain. 1917 comes around, but Jews are still here through World War I. Then comes 1929, a horrible riot comes through the town. Jordan takes over in 1948 and kicks out the Jews from here. The Jews did not come back till 1967. Basically, this town was ethnically cleansed of Jews from 1929 to 1967. But we're back, which is pretty cool, historical, or godly, depends on what what your inclination is. We believe that Arabs should live here, the ones that accept our sovereignty and want to play by the rules of the Jewish state of Israel. First thing, let's just also admit that the future is not as bad as one might think. There are forces that make the Israel-Arab conflict much bigger than it is, because that serves their interests.
Child, including him. The only survivor in his house was this 3-year-old boy who survived falling under his mother's dead body. You have to understand that people were so shocked. The Haganah saw what was about to happen. The Haganah offered the Jews of Hebron weapons. You know what Jews of Hebron said? Get out of here. We don't want your weapons. Get away. We've lived in harmony. Why would they think anything would happen in Hebron? Hebron's different. When did the rioting, when did the massacre finally end? When the British were here with guns, by the way, didn't lift a finger. Only when the mob surrounded a British officer with a gun, his life was suddenly in danger, then he starts to shoot. And that's when the rioters disperse. Understand?
And so it was time to head back to Jerusalem.
So you did the dual narrative experience. You were with Muhammad, you met Tariq, you saw the Muslim Palestinian narrative. You were with me, you met Ishai Fleischer. We saw the Tomb of the Patriarchs.
So, today has been an absolute whirlwind. We were on the tour basically from sunrise to sunset. We have a lot of reflections, a lot of things going through our minds. But for now, we're just gonna enjoy this falafel and hummus, because if there's one thing I think we can all agree on, it's that falafel and hummus are amazing.
I did not expect this.
Alright, so it's the day after now, and yesterday was wild.
Yeah, I don't think we need to say too much, so we'll leave it at that, but it left a very big impact on us, and all I can say is that I wouldn't say it was necessarily dual perspective or very fair. It was definitely not what we expected.
We really went into it hoping that we would get a sort of hopeful perspective on the conflict, leaving with at least a grain of hope for a brighter future and a resolution and everything, but sadly we were left feeling the opposite. There's so much potential in a tour like that, but I don't think the execution was there.
We're disappointed, but we're gonna make the most out of the rest of our days in Israel to try to explore and learn more without such an extreme perspective.
So now we're gonna head out and explore Jerusalem for the first time, which is very exciting. Or it's the first time for me. You've been here before, but first time for me. That's gonna continue in the next video.
So you'll get to see hopefully a much more positive experience or positive side of things, yes, in the next video in a few days. So until then,
see you around the world. Thank you guys so much for watching this far. Here follows the extended versions of each person's talk. We hope you stick around to watch the rest of it, but in any case, we love you and hope you understand why this video had to be a bit more somber and serious than usual on our channel. Take care, and we'll see you around the world.
I just remember 10 days ago we used to have the Muslim feast, the Eid, the end of Ramadan feast, and I have that time to come and meet with Muhammad in the evening. Muhammad was running and say, sorry Tariq, but the checkpoint to my house, in order to go to my house, closed at 10. p.m. I thought that he was joking. I know that it is closed in the normal days, but this is the day before the feast. Normally we stay until 5 a.m. Everybody going to the barber, preparing, buying some sweets, some food. So I told Muhammad, because the checkpoint is closed at 10, I have to drive you back to the area in order to catch the checkpoint. I ran quickly. It was a huge, traffic like Christmas and Easter celebration. I have two of my children with me in my car. And they said, Dad, why you are thinking that he will not pass by the checkpoint? It's the Eid day. They will allow him. I told them we have to wait. He left. He walked to the area. 5 minutes later, he came back. He said, the checkpoint is closed. I cannot access my home. We have to wait it for at least 1 hour, 1 hour and a half. My children were saying, how would he accept to live in this area? Why he did not find another place to live outside? This is the life, how it looked like here. Even though I talk about many restrictions, but Palestinians are still eager to live in peace. We are not seeking to make conflicts. This is our land, this is our area. History is already talking about the economy, the culture, the life that is taking place here. I don't want my children one day to dream that they will go to the sea to swim, as I did when I was a child. And I was able to swim in Greece when I went there to do, my master's studies. People were laughing. They say, you don't know how to swim? I said, no. They said, but your country is already looking to a beautiful Mediterranean Sea. We have the Dead Sea, a beautiful area, 400 meters below the sea level. And my childhood, we were not allowed to go there due to the Israeli restriction. Because when I was a child, I have to be stuck at home because of either a curfew imposed by an Israeli army or a strike done by the Palestinian against the Israeli restriction. This is what I don't want my children, grandchildren. I don't want also an Israeli child or even an Israeli grandchild to live. I enjoyed being in Vienna because it was easy for you when you are in Vienna to go from a country to a country without borders, without checkpoints, without identity cards, or without being restricted not to go to the sea because you don't have a permission or because there is an Israeli soldier who is still young, serving in the army, does not know what he is doing, but you know that this Palestinian is your enemy and you have to keep a distance and keep them away. When I talk about the Palestinian narrative, many of the Palestinians consider me as a left-wing, even though I try always to avoid to talk about politics and connect what I talk about with politics. But as I told you, everything here is connected with politics.
Any business not through Israel where they are not involved?
Where they are not involved, it's impossible. But we can do business directly with you, as an example, in Sweden, in fair trade. Because, for me, it's very hard for me to export the Palestinian product if it will be stuck in the port, or even to Jordan. When I want to send goods to Jordan, Israel have to check it for a security reason. It have to pass an Israeli taxes system. The airport in Ben Gurion, we are not allowed to use it as Palestinians. So even when I travel to Vienna, I have to go to Jordan, fly through Jordan, from the airport to Jordan, so it's also an extra cost for me. But also through Jordan, the port to Jordan is a mainland, so it's only open 5 days a week. You have the Palestinian security who check you, and then you move to an Israeli security, and then you move to a Jordanian security. Each one of those securities, you have to take a different car, so this means an extra cost. Getting back to your question, am I optimistic or pessimistic? I am optimistic because I think somebody who makes business in this difficult situation will be able to do much better business if situation is getting better.
You mentioned that you don't want your children or grandchildren or Israeli grandchildren to live under the same system. So what system would you like to see?
I want to live the same system that you already live in Sweden, even in any other country in the world, the United States. I was surprised when I traveled to United States. I was invited by the State Department as one of the international visitors. We went to visit 5 different states in the United States. In here, in order for you to travel, you have to suffer a lot by traveling from here to Jordan, which is nearby, and then afterwards taking a flight to another country. I want my child to be able to go tomorrow to visit South Africa, to go to visit United States, to visit Sweden, not from another place, but from this airport. Really rethinking about it, we do more business than China with Israel. We do more business than Turkey with Israel. More even than all the countries of European Union with Israel. So why we should have all of those injustice that is taking place? Get out from a place that you already occupy. Give people their freedom. Give people back their stability. Stop using and misusing religion religion as an excuse. As a Palestinian Muslim, together with Palestinian Christians, together with Palestinian Jewish who used to live in Hebron before 1929, those people who were living here in Palestine before 1929 were Palestinians. My grandmother told me, she was living during 1929, she told me that those Jewish people who were living here in Hebron, they were part of the Palestinian community. Many of the grandsons of the people who used to live in Hebron refused to live in illegal Israeli settlements that is taking place in Hebron and misusing their grandfather names. For me, I don't mind as a Palestinian Muslim, Christian or Jewish, which religion you come from, but I don't accept somebody to misuse religion in order to take by force my house, my building, or to make the life of people very difficult.
This country, visitors have more rights to move than the residents. There are places that you're gonna visit today in Hebron. My personal last time being in it was 22 years ago. There's places that you've visited maybe that I have never been in. For example, the Mediterranean Sea. I only saw it from Italy. Never saw it from my country. I've never been in Eilat. Even if we get permissions to go to Jerusalem, to Tel Aviv, to those places, it's written on the passport except Eilat.
You said you have both a Jordanian and a Palestinian.
I have a Palestinian citizenship and a Jordanian temporary passport.
What do you wish that they did that they're not doing?
There is a political level that they do give support, but then there is a red lines that they cannot access. Unfortunately, the side who drew those red lines and the values of humanity and all that stuff is the side who was the reason to, of occupying our country. I don't want you to get offended, okay? It's not only the Arabic world, it's also Europe. If the conflict between Russia and Ukraine doesn't make you sleep, just imagine this is happening in Africa. Or imagine Ukraine is Palestine. The sides who build up the values of human rights and all that stuff, we're actually the sides who are causing this occupations in my country, in other people's countries. So if you access those values that side have built, you're wrong, The right and wrong has been made by those sides who were actually the reason of colonizing other people's lands, right? On a political level, I'm not denying the fact that yes, the Arabic countries are supporting, but they cannot do more, because if they access that red line, America will come up with its veto. Before having the idea of creating a Jewish state to the Jewish people around the world, they actually occupied the Arabic systems before that. So before occupying the land, they occupied the Arabic systems around us. And I'm not denying that fact, I'm not shy of it. The Arabic world, based on the governments we have, is already occupied before Palestine actually got occupied. From Saudi Arabia to Syria to Lebanon to Egypt, all the 22 countries. And I'm telling you, if the Palestinian case have been finished and any Arabic country want to normalize their relationship with Israel, we won't complain. Guess how they justify their agreements with Israel? That we have signed Oslo agreement with Israel. If you guys have signed an agreement with Israel, why are you complaining about us signing agreements? Actually, one of the big reasons that it drove the PLO, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, to sign an agreement with Israel is the massacres that the Palestinians have faced in the Palestinian refugee camps in Syria and Lebanon, in Jordan. The massacres that have happened in Lebanon was made by the Israeli soldiers and the Lebanese.
What does peace look like? Here's what peace looks like for a person like me. How do I define myself? I'm a nationalist. I believe that ancient peoples have a right to their ancestral homeland, where they have their calendar, their coinage, their language, and they live on their land. So how does peace look like? It's actually very simple. A strong Jewish state surrounded by strong Arab states living in concert for a better region. That's called the Abraham Accords. There's a name for that already. It's a vision. Abrahamic heritage celebrated by its adherents, small Israel, Jewish state, surrounded by Arab countries. We're all children of Abraham, living together in concert. With minorities, Arab minorities living in Israel that accept our sovereignty. It's really pretty simple. It's not so tricky. Really, Israel has 3 pillars. One pillar, the first pillar, is the Bible. Now, if you're into the Bible, then Israel makes sense. Israel makes a lot of sense. You're like, okay, the Bible, here's these people, they lived here, they have a promise from God, that whole thing, they're indigenous because of their history, okay? But if you believe that the Bible is just some crazy thing that who's following this book that's 3,300 years old? Who wants to do that? That's crazy and backwards. And so the Bible is one of the principles of Israel. And God is one of the principles of Israel. So if you don't believe in God and you're post-God, post-Bible, post-church, post all these things, so you have a hard time understanding that pillar of Israel. The second pillar of Israel is nationalism. If you have an easy time understanding that there are nation states, there are tribes, peoples that live on their land for a long time, they have their rules, they have their cultures, they have their way, and they want their land to be protected for their people, like a kind of big family that wants it for their family and does not want everybody else to come in and sweep them aside. If you understand what nationalism is, and every Irish person understands what a nationalism is, and every Czech person understands, and every Hungarian person understands what nationalism is. If you don't understand nationalism, like some people in Western Europe, let's say the German folks, they're like, nationalism? We're post-nationalists. We don't believe in borders. We live in one currency, no borders, free trade, open. Here's an example of Hungary. Hungary was like deeply anti-Semitic. You know what I think? I still think they still are anti-Semitic. But it turns out that they're not really anti-Semitic, they're just xenophobic, which means that they really just don't want others in their land. Now I understand them a little bit better. The third pillar is, it's a Middle East country. Therefore, if it's a Middle East country, you need to be like a Middle Easterner. Gotta be tough. You gotta be tough out here in the Middle East. There are warring tribes try to sneak in, you gotta push them back. And there are other things that are very Middle Eastern, like collective punishment. If a terrorist comes in and kills Jews, it's not one dude. He's part of a society and a family that's teaching him that. And if you can't see that, then you're not thinking like a Middle Easterner. And that's tied into defense, which is Israel's a gun country. We push back on the bad guys because we've been bullied for a lot of years, and including the Holocaust, and therefore we're a gun country, a defense country. The easiest is when a person understands those three pillars.
I just want to ask something very specific about what our guide on the Muslim side told us. Because he said, while we were walking in the souk, he said that it's pretty common for the people living above, the Jews, to throw down trash, to throw different liquids. He said one time someone had poured bleach down. Do you think that's true?
I think that's exaggerated and made in order to create that image. I think it's rarely true. However, there is times where this is the Middle East, people push you, you push back. I'm not going to tell you that the Jews are always, perfectly behaved and always buttoned up. I'm not going to say that, and I don't even want to say that. Around here, if somebody pushes you, you push back. On the other hand, the truth of the matter is that whole shuk business is an industry. It's an industry of creating that whole you see we're abused, victimization. It's like you see Hebron. Hebron's giant. It's a giant and wealthy Arab city. This whole business that here the Jews throw stuff at us. Look, the Jews are more often the victims than they are the victimizers. That is, of course, the reverse of what you're being told in the media. What can I tell you? A lot of the world is anti-Israel and anti-Semitic from our perspective. I'll give you an example. The biggest discomfort that they're always talking about is the checkpoints. The checkpoints! It's the same checkpoint you would have crossing between the US and Canada. It would take the same amount of time. You have a PA authority that rules. You want to come into Israel, we have to check you. What do you want? So there's such an exaggerated attitude around here. And we think that the reason there's such an exaggerated attitude is because there's elements in the world that don't want to see Israel flourish and prosper as a Jewish state. And they want to undermine it. And they've tried to undermine it in the past through big fat wars. But miraculously, we were able to push back on 6 Arab armies and stuff like that, supported by the Soviet Union and that kind of stuff. So now there's new ways to do it, and it's through the undermining of Israel's narrative and through besmirching Israel's good name. Israel's the most liberal country in this whole region. To me, it's way too liberal. Right? I wouldn't, but I'm just saying for the liberal folks come out and say it's not liberal enough. It's like, are you serious? This is by far the most progressive and healthy and all that kind of stuff. It's just such an absurdity. The Arabs around here, the whole Arab world is jealous of their wealth. There's such a package of lies out there from our perspective. I'm for peace with Arab countries. That's what I'm saying. As a nationalist, I want to have a strong Israel in relations with strong Arab countries. In fact, if you want to drill down a little more, what's the future? The future is that Israel is the local defense contractor of this region. It's really the defense umbrella. It's the one that's going to defend Saudi Arabia from Iran. Saudi Arabia's not going to do it. So really the truth of the matter is the Sunni Arabs are coming around being like, wait a minute, we need Israel as an ally, not an enemy. P.S. Israel's not going anywhere, so we might as well quit that war. Sadly, the many Palestinian factions are sponsored by Qatar, Kuwait, those are recalcitrant countries that don't want to join the Abraham Accords way of thinking. They want to continue the war against us. They're not going to win. We're going to continue to be here. That's just the way it is. There are countries that want to move ahead. I have great hopes for Mohammed bin Salman, and I wish him here. I pray in the synagogue for his health, because I think that he has a chance of becoming a new Saudi Arabia that wants to join us in a regional prosperity thinking and open this region up. We can have that, or we can have Afghanistan. Which one do you want? Which forces do you want to take over here? Do you think these Hamas forces that are anti-Israel are going to be good to the Arabs? Please, it's Taliban. It's Taliban all over again, for God's sakes. What's the difference between ethnic and nationalist? What's the difference? There's a slight difference. Ethnic means that it's got to be my ethnic group. Nationalist means it's my ethnic group plus other people that want to join my nation. For example, here in Israel, the Druze. They are people they speak Arabic, but they have a different religion. They believe in the prophet Jethro, who was Moses' father-in-law. They have a different religion, and they live here in Israel very well and are very successful and are enjoying the Israeli army and fighting the Israeli army successfully. They are Arab speakers. I think that they're part of our nation. A nationalist is what you think it means. It means that you support ethnic people's rights on an ancestral homeland.
So would that mean that in the United States,
power
should be returned to the indigenous people of the United States?
Maybe, but that's not my problem.
So
you're American,
You are from
right?
the US, right?
I happen to have lived in the United States for a part of my life. I'm thankful for it. The United States has its history, and it's trying to work out its history vis-a-vis indigenous peoples. There's no question.
Just like here, right?
But we are the indigenous people.
There are other indigenous
There are
people.
exactly. There are also
yes or no?
Just
yes or no?
Jews.
First thing, let's discuss that. First thing, I don't disagree with you that there might be other indigenous peoples here, but that doesn't mean that they have a right to a state. They never had a state here, and they may have civil rights, but not national rights. I mean, to say, I agree with somebody has a right to their property, but if all their land, all this region was ever conquered by conquest, it was never really theirs, they never made a capital here, it was never really their country, never existed a different country here, and this is our country twice over, we had 2 commonwealths here, and we're back now. So we'll give them the respect that they deserve, but that doesn't mean that they should have a right to a state, in our opinion, of course. But we're the indigenous peoples here, and that is what the Palestinian propaganda machine wants you to not believe. They want to say they're indigenous and we're white colonialists. That's their mantra. We're in occupation. I'm in occupation in Hebron. Really? I thought that maybe you're in occupation Hebron from your 2 conquests in 637 and 1267, but in the meantime we were always here, never left this place, and now we're back. You never had a capital here. You pushed in here with a fake country, Jordan, in 1948. We pushed you guys back in 1967. Why am I in occupation? I'm not in occupation in my own homeland. King David is from here, for God's sakes. I can find you seals here from 2,900 years ago that say to the king in Hebron, in Hebrew. So I'm not in occupation in this land, and anybody who uses that language is just silly to me. Now, I say we can solve the conflict with people that want to live in Israel peacefully. If you don't want to live in Israel, maybe you want to go to Jordan, which is where you used to have citizenship anyway. And Jordan, country next door, was Jewish land anyway originally. But we created a Palestinian state called Jordan. We already made a 2-state solution, so go to Jordan. Or other deals. We have other ways to solve this conflict. But certainly not to give away this land and to create a Palestinian country that is also, P.S., on top of that, is going to be a terrorist state like we see in Gaza. And by the way, are you doing any Arabs any favors by creating another Hamas control of the region? Are you doing any liberal favors to anybody? No. You're creating enemies for the Jews and enemies for the Arabs.